Welcome to the Epcotian Adventure,
A podcast where we'll talk about all things Disney, but we're Epcot centered.
including tips and tricks, festivals and favorites, and the very latest in our rankings and reviews.
But we're still old enough to remember when even hidden Mickeys were just a myth.
This is episode 57, Disney Myths and Legends.
Or, is Walt actually cryogenically frozen and hidden inside a theme park? Let's find out.
So now, please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast as we embark on our Epcotian adventure. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Epcotian Adventure. I'm Rod.
And I'm Sue.
And this is episode 57, Disney Myths and Legends. This is going to be a fun one.
I think so.
This is our April Fool's Day event, I guess you could call it. But we're not really going to fool you with these. We're going to try to unfool you with some of the things that we know or have found out that just because they're a myth or a legend about Disney doesn't mean they're true.
That is definitely the case. We've found some funky ones out there. We're not going to go through all of them because there are some rabbit holes you can go down on these.
Thousands online.
Some of the things that people have come up with just boggle my mind. So We're going to go through some of our favorites or some of the ones that were a surprise to us in one way or another. But if we get to the end and yours wasn't listed, please let us know because I'm fascinated by some of the stuff that I found out on this, on doing the research for this.
Well, let's get right to the meat, the crux, the heart of the matter. Is Walt frozen in the Matterhorn under pirates?
Under the castle.
And It's a Small World. What did you find out?
No.
This one blatantly is false. Walt is buried at Forest Lawn in Glendale, California. He's resting peacefully and is not buried, nor is his head cryogenically frozen. Yeah, this is just a big no.
But I did find out some stuff. So here's the thing. Walt did pass away on December 15th, 1966. It is believed he passed away from lung cancer. All of that, true. Buried at Forest Lawn in Glendale, like you said. Didn't have a big ceremony, which was part of what sparked the controversy of, is he actually buried there? He is. But here's the thing. Previous to his death, a couple years prior, he actually did reach out to Bob Nelson, who was the president of the Cryogenic Society of California.
Really?
He did, and it's never been confirmed that he wanted to have himself frozen. He was just asking some questions. Knowing Walt's brain, who knows what was going on in there, or what he was asking about, or if he was years ahead of his time and planning, Frozen. It's a whole different take on the movie Frozen.
Well, or Futurama, which is now a Disney product, like The Simpsons, and the little heads in the jars with all the presidents and famous people.
You just never know what was going on in there. But because Bob Nelson had said something in an interview years later about Walt reaching out, suddenly people were making speculations. So I did find some basis for that myth, but it is false. He is not frozen.
Good. Thank you for that info. That's actually more info than I previously knew. That's really cool.
I wanted to know. This is like the longest standing myth. Like, this is the one that you always hear thrown out there. So I just wanted to know where it came from, and that's the closest I could find to like where that myth actually started. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's really cool. So what was the first myth you found?
So another one, well, that was obviously top of both of our lists.
Top of the myth list.
But the other one that you hear a lot is that when storms come through and when hurricanes come through Florida, as they do, that the castle is able to be dismantled and taken apart to protect it during a storm. Rod?
Not true. No, the castle is one big solid piece of concrete. It's sculpted to look like it's got bricks and has many turrets and things, but none of them are collapsible or take-offable.
There is a picture that floats out there when a storm comes around of the top turret being placed on the top of the castle.
Yeah, but that was them building it.
Exactly. And it's there permanently. It's not them dismantling it because the storm's coming through. If they had to do that every time a hurricane came through Florida,
oh my heavens.
Can you even imagine?
No, and it was built in Florida, so it is built to hurricane standards.
Yes. It could still sustain damage if one came through strong enough and in the right location, but if that happens, then that happens. It's not going anywhere.
Well, the next one I found was Woody and Buzz fall to the ground if you say Andy's coming. What'd you find out?
Well, here's the thing. This one actually was true.
One time.
But it is now false.
The picture of it one time.
And it went viral. And it's brilliant. I mean, think of how cool that would be to just be like, hey, Andy's coming, and have them fall to the ground and be toys suddenly instead of interacting.
It would be
It's a fun concept.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
But it would be way too hard on the characters.
Yes.
And their friends.
And their clothes.
And their clothing.
Not their costumes.
No,
or,
that's not a
actors.
costume with an actor.
No,
that's
no.
a character with clothing, and it would be very hard on both the character and the clothing. We'll put it that way for those children's that are listening.
And if you imagine the huge line of people waiting, and then everybody does that, I mean, just no.
The closest thing to that right now is if you go to the new barbecue restaurant at Disney Hollywood Studios at the Toy Story area. They do have a voiceover that comes on in the restaurant that says Andy's coming, and everybody freezes, and you're encouraged to do along. But that's about as close as it comes.
Yes. Now, they do still have people doing this in the parks when they meet any of the Toy Story characters. Someone will inevitably yell, Andy's coming, just to see what happens. All they do is the character wrangler, that's not what they're called.
The character host.
The host will say, no, Andy's away at college, it's safe, we're fine. So they will not do this. They won't do it because you saw it once on YouTube. It's not a thing anymore. But it is interesting because it actually was true at one time.
What was the next thing you found?
The next one I found, we've actually talked about on this podcast a couple of times, but there is a giant weather dome over the parks so that if it gets too hot or too rainy, they can put up the dome. Yeah,
this actually happened to me. I think I've told this story a couple times, but where I was working what was called a pack shift or parade area control for Tomorrowland. I was out on Main Street during one of the parades, and a lady came up to me in tears that it was raining, and please put up the dome.
Dead serious.
And I thought she was kidding, so I laughed along with her. I didn't laugh at her. I laughed along with her, only realizing she was not laughing. She was crying, and seriously thought that I could call somebody to put the dome up over Magic Kingdom. Folks, there is no weather dome at Walt Disney World.
It would be up every day.
Well, and the cost of that alone and the structure that it would take to actually hold that would have cost more than the original park. So,
oh, by far. Can you imagine? And it would have to be retractable. So where is it coming from?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's not a thing. It would be lovely, but it's not a thing.
This next one is one of my favorites. It says the turkey legs are made of emu or ostrich or zebra. Where do people get these ideas?
I hadn't heard that one.
Folks, it is actually, turkey legs are actually turkey legs. Now, it is pressed meat. So
yes.
It's
a different texture.
A gigantic turkey, or it's actually artificially pushed together. I'm not exactly sure. I wasn't able to find a lot of information on who produces the turkey legs for Disney, but they are, in fact, turkey.
Now, this one I did find some background information on, too.
Oh, go, please.
So this rumor actually started with Zachary Levi, who's the voice of Flynn Rider in Tangled, along with many other things that he's known for. But he was being interviewed by Conan O'Brien, and Zachary Levi was joking around and said something about he had cast member friends who had said that the turkey legs are emu. And it just blew up the internet, and it has been persistently believed ever since. This is not a true fact. Zachary Levi was being funny, and apparently people took him seriously.
Yes, it makes me laugh, ha.
Turkey legs are turkey. The next one that I found that was kind of interesting is that there is an entire underground city below the Magic Kingdom.
That is true.
And false.
And false. It actually is not a tunnel. It's actually the Magic Kingdom is built with the guest areas on the second floor. They're called utilidors.
No, it is not a complete city. It's not, people don't live down there. There's not gas stations or grocery stores or whatever you're thinking is down there. They are literally just concrete tunnels so that you can get from one area to the next without being visible by guests.
There are wardrobe locations down there, so if you're picking up your costume, there are break rooms and locker rooms. There is a location called Cast Cutters, which is a haircut location that you can go get your haircut as a cast member.
Or be sent to.
Or be sent to, that is true. Well, not as much anymore.
That's true. That's not as thing anymore.
There are a couple different locations where you can get food. So there's vending machines in several locations, plus there's actually a cafeteria with a Subway. Not a Subway train, a Subway restaurant where you can purchase a sandwich and cookies and stuff as a cast member for lunch. It's down in the Utilidors.
So yes, it is on the second floor, so there is an underground level. Yes, there are areas under there, but it is not an entire underground city.
Now, to dispel other myths, Disneyland does in fact have a tunnel, one, that goes from Tomorrowland to the Galactic Grill and the stage that you see come up in Tomorrowland. Similar to that, there is an underground or a lower level area in New Orleans that houses the main kitchen that produces the food for places like the Blue Bayou, Cafe Orleans, and Tiana's Palace. And there's actually a stage that comes up out of the ground there too at Tiana's Palace that most people don't realize can go up and down as well, down into the basement level. That is actually a tunnel because that level of the Disneyland is built up a little higher to keep the water in, of course, to Rivers of America. But it was dug out, so it is actually kind of a tunnel system. But it is not an underground city there either. There is also, underneath that same area, Haunted Mansion and Pirates have tunnels for days under there. You can get lost in there as a cast member in both of those show buildings. And you feel like you're underground, but same thing. You're just kind of backstage at ground level.
And again, what we've talked about a little bit before is that was very utilitarian because they had to get under the railroad tracks to get to those show buildings for Haunted Mansion and Pirates.
This next myth I'm just calling Dirty Disney. There are two of these, actually. One of them is the ever common, there is the word sex in the clouds in The Lion King. Yes, you can see a word. No, it is not the word sex. It is actually, if you stop it and look at the right place, a symbol falls to the ground, which releases a swirl of leaves into the air, very dramatically. You can see the letters SF, as in Frank, X, a nod to one of the teams that worked on the animated film.
For special effects.
For special effects, exactly.
Because they were creating that little cloud and wanted to give themselves a nod.
Yeah, and I love it when animators do that kind of thing, but it looked too much like that word sex, and people went, ooh, dirty! The other one in the same vein is there is a frame, or there's a picture of a nude lady in The Rescuers. This actually, believe it or not, folks, and parents, cover your ears for your kids. This is true if you stop it at the right place and you have a really early VHS tape, because this was discovered and removed by Disney in the 80s. We're talking a long time ago. And there is just one frame that somebody snuck in to a window where Bianca and Bernard are kind of running, and you can see them pass it, and if you stop it at the right place, you can see this X-rated or R-rated, probably PG-13 by today's standards, rated picture. But again, it does not exist in today's DVDs or even late VHS.
I'm sure it's not on the Disney Plus version if you watch it there.
Definitely not on the Disney Plus version, no. So that was one I was interested to find out it was true. I did not know that.
Yeah, I did not either. I thought that was interesting. I found that one too. My next one is no one has ever died at Disney.
Yeah, as a cast member, I can verify that is false.
It is false. There was a rumor for a long time that if someone died at Disney, that they were given life supporting measures until they were off property so that they could be declared deceased off Disney property. That's actually not true either. The people have actually died. It doesn't happen often. There was an incident where a guest was hit by a tour bus in the parking lot at Epcot. They were declared dead on site. I mean, I'm not going to go into a bunch of them. There's not all that many. But it does happen, and people are declared deceased.
Yeah, there are known stories about the Matterhorn and Space Mountain and other attractions and other locations within the park where both cast members and guests have passed away. it is a very sad thing that happens, but when you have that many millions of people coming through a large space every year, unfortunately, it is bound to happen. So
of course, false. Disney does want to maintain the happiest place on Earth, the most magical place on Earth. They want to maintain that happy, nothing ever goes wrong mentality, but they're realistic about it as well. Things happen.
The next one I came up with or found were Disney lawsuits. Now, some of these are just weird. Some of these are legend, and some of these are real. So the first one I found was a guest tried to sue after being struck by a brick from Cinderella's castle. Well, we just talked about this one. This one goes around the cast member and the Reddit and all kinds of forums all the time as being just one of the craziest ones. However, there are no documents to show that this actually happened. So this one is being labeled an urban legend.
Because, again, there are no bricks in the castle.
Right. But the lawsuit itself apparently is just somebody came up with. It was not able to be found. A guest tried to sue after the hydrolator at the Living Seas Pavilion at Epcot went below water so far that they suffered ear damage from the pressure change. Again, this is one that goes around a lot of forums, but again, no documentation has been found to actually support this one. Although I love this one because according to the urban legend for this, they took the court group out there, the jury and the judge and everything, and opened both sets of doors to show that you could walk right through it. And therefore, if it was real, it was dismissed. But again, this one is being labeled as an urban legend. The last one was a guest sued after being stuck on It's a Small World for 40 minutes. This one is true. And believe it or not, this guest won $8,000 at trial. But before you lose your mind, the guest was confined to a wheelchair. And it was ruled that there was not adequate plans for such a situation for an evac.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
This one might have some merit, because if Disney was made to change their evacuation plans for their boat rides and other attractions that make it more difficult for people within a wheelchair to actually be evacuated, then it actually did some good, in my opinion.
Yes.
But that one is true.
And it wasn't just that they had to listen to the song for 40 minutes.
Exactly. That would be enough for me to go bonkers myself. But
all you'd have to do is play it for the jury over and over for that long, and they would rule in your favor.
Exactly.
The next one I'm going to do is for the Haunted Mansion. And there is a persisting rumor that one of the singing busts in the graveyard is based on the face of Walt Disney.
We, as cast members at Mansion, used to hear this all the time.
It does. Okay, it is false. But in their defense, whoever they is who believes this rumor,
the global
it does
they.
look a little like Walt.
It does. It really does. But it is not Walt.
It is, in fact, Thurl Ravenscroft, who is one of our favorites. He did many, many voices. If you ever hear that deep, booming voice in any of the music or rides, that is Thurl.
Best known for Tony the Tiger and the song, He's a Mean One, Mr. Grinch.
For years and years, he was uncredited. I believe he actually is credited now. But yeah, that is him. So his voice appears in Mansion and in Pirates and in Tiki, and he's everywhere.
Somebody has stolen my thunder! Hey, Henry, what's on now? Let's get on with the show. They're great!
He's a Disney legend.
He is, in the facial structure he has, especially when projected onto that bust in the graveyard.
Is this some kind of bust?
Well, it's very impressive, yes, but we need to ask you a few questions.
It does look a lot like Walt.
It really does.
Because his facial mannerisms are very similar to Walt.
It's fun. So I kind of like that it looks like Walt, but it is, in fact, not Walt. It is Thurl.
The next one I found was that there are two abandoned theme parks, or two abandoned parks at Walt Disney World. And this is actually true. I remember this one. The first one was called River Country. It's over near the Fort Wilderness Campground. It opened in 1976 and was the first Disney water park. The park closed in 2001 after, the slowdown worldwide in 2001. Tourism didn't need 3 water parks at Disney. So Typhoon Lagoon was open, Blizzard Beach was open, Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach had all the guests, River Country then closed.
So let's follow up on that one for just a second, because as soon as you heard River Country, you may have been thinking the same thing that we were. and that there was a persisting rumor that River Country actually closed because a boy died from a brain-eating amoeba. So this is both true and false. This is one of those tragic things that do happen. There are dangerous amoeba that can breed in fresh water in Florida, and a boy did contract this terrible thing and passed away. They never were able to actually prove that it happened at Disney. So the park stayed open for another 2 years after this. This wasn't why the park closed, but it was confirmed that the boy did pass away from that amoeba.
Yeah, and River Country was one of the few water parks that actually uses natural water or fresh water for the circulation. It was not a separate pool. It was actually part of and had water going in back and forth between it and Bay Lake. So I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. So we definitely had to address that one with the River Country story.
The second one was called Discovery Island, and I also did, as a kid, get to visit this one. This opened as Treasure Island in 1974, and the island park in the middle of Bay Lake was renamed Discovery Island when it was changed to a zoological park. The park itself held about 150 small animals and birds that called it home until 1999, when they were all moved over to Disney's Animal Kingdom and Discovery Island was closed. You can still see it. If you take the boat from Magic Kingdom to the campground, you can see Discovery Island off to your left-hand side.
I remember going there as a kid.
Yeah, we went and saw some bird show, I believe, there.
All I remember is there was a parrot that stood on its head, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. My next one is going to be that if you do something wrong at a Disney park, that you go to Disney jail. Rod, you want to comment?
Disney jail. I've heard that term many times, and unfortunately, security cast members, since their badge has got a mouse on it, some people think that, oh, well, you don't really have any authority. Well, at Disneyland and at the Disney World parks, Orange County Sheriff's Department on both coasts, because they're both in Orange County, Florida, and California, are there to back up security. And they do have a holding cell at all of the parks in their security office. Now, it's not really a cell. It's a room with a door that can be locked. It is a area that they just put people in waiting for either Anaheim PD, Orange County Sheriff, or some other law enforcement to show up and assist them with. It's not a Disney jail where they just feed you churros and Coca-Cola all day, because I would work hard to get into that. That would be great. Sleep in there and have churros and Coca-Cola, but no, it does not really exist.
I'm picturing the jail cells in the Andy Griffith Show. So
yeah, not
it's
quite
not
like
really
that.
bad.
I actually had seen inside the security department at Disneyland for reasons dealing with guests before. When you're a lead at Disneyland and attractions, you're going to see security more often than you like, unfortunately. And I actually saw the room, and it has a lock, but it could still be opened by the person inside. It's just alarmed.
If it was unlocked.
Well, no, they don't lock people in. They're not allowed to do that.
Oh, gotcha.
It is just an alarmed door.
They do call it a detaining cell. So they can detain you while they're waiting.
Using the same citizens arrest laws that are state to state in, like, Walmart.
Right.
So it's the same way they would do it there. So they're not law enforcement, but they do have law enforcement's backing for that reason. My next one is one that I just call Surf Disney. The myth or the legend is that you used to be able to surf the waves at the Polynesian Resort at Walt Disney World. Believe it or not, this is true. When the Polynesian, or when Walt Disney World first opened in 1971, there was a wave machine installed on an island facing the Polynesian Resort. While the intent was to allow guests to surf the Seven Seas Lagoon, it only lasted for a couple years, was eroding the beach right there in front of the Poly. And high maintenance costs, too. The wave machine technology at the time was very new, really, to resorts. It was before water parks started installing them, and there were multiple companies that did this. So this was a huge investment that really didn't go anywhere.
Cool idea, though.
I love it. They tried to fire it back up in 1985 to test it out again, and it wasn't going to work. So they pulled the machinery out, and the only thing left now on the island that's just off of the Polynesian is a little brick wall that shows kind of where it was, but it is now completely gone. But you did, and from 71 to 72, you could grab a surfboard and catch waves right there and hang 10 right outside the Poly.
That's so cool. I love that. It fits so well with the Polynesian theme.
Yeah, oh, I know. They had sailboats and other things there, too, that you could do. A lot of water sports that are now, unfortunately, gone.
That's so fun. Okay, my next one is going to take a little darker turn.
Uh-oh.
And this is that there are real bones in the Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically at Disneyland. And this is true. Now, are all the skeletons that you see in Pirates of the Caribbean actual bones? No, they are not.
Or are they?
Look at the bones!
No, they're not.
But, but there is actually one that I know of. There may be more. There is one that I know of.
Yeah, there's at least one, maybe two.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Well, the way the story goes is that the skull that's in the headboard in the captain's quarters is a skull that was donated by a biomedical lab way back when and is still there. Or it was, it's hard to tell if it is still there now, but it was when I worked there back in the 80s and 90s. And
this is not the skeleton who's reading in bed. This is the one that's actually the skull and crossbones on the actual headboard.
Correct. And then the other myth was that the skeleton in bed was a full skeleton also from a similar situation. But
oh, interesting.
That one was never, I could never get proof of that from any place. And even as a cast member, it was a little bit of a myth. So I'm pretty sure it is just the skull that's in the headboard.
That's cool. I like the authenticity there.
Well, the next three I'm going to do are myths and legends, but we've got quick answers to all three of these. The first one, Disneyland is haunted. This is true. Listen to our Halloween episode 40 from October of 2023.
Nice plug. I like that.
Exclusive clubs at Disneyland and Disney World. Is this really true that you can go and pay to be in an exclusive hidden club?
Oh, it's so true. Listen to episode 33.
That's right. And Disney puts out smells in the parks to make you want to buy things. Also true.
Also true.
Smellitizers are all over the Disney parks. Listen to our Disney Inventions episode 52. So we cover these myths and legends in a lot of our past episodes. But Sue, do you have another one?
I do have one more. Well, I have two. Okay. Yes. The answer is yes.
Go for it. Go for it.
One of them is the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland has actual bullet holes. And this is true. Rod, you were a lead on that ride as well. Tell us about it.
This is true. The Haunted Mansion in the ballroom, one of the big, large panes of glass in the archways. They're hard to tell that they're a pane of glass, but when you look out into the ballroom, you'll see that there are very large archways. Each of those is a large floor-to-ceiling pane of glass. Well, back in the 70s, somebody snuck a gun in, believed to be a pellet gun, not an actual, 45 caliber or something, and shot towards the ghosts. Well, it's way up high, so apparently they either have really bad aim or the other pellets just bounced off the glass. Nobody's really quite sure because nobody actually saw this occur. But Disney, being the great storytellers they are, realized...
And frugal.
And very frugal, yes, because they would have to literally remove the ceiling above the ballroom and helicopter in a new pane of glass. It's way too big to get in any other way. That's how they were originally put in. They put a spider web around where the cracked glass is, and to this day, if you look up into the tops of the archways, you will see a spider web that's actually a bullet hole.
And again, that is specifically Disneyland. I am going to go with another guest-driven one and say that there is a myth that the guest is always right, and that Disney cast members are not allowed to say no.
Cast members are discouraged from saying the word no if possible, but it really does come down to if no is no, it's no. But if it's I don't know, many times it's let's go find out together.
Yep. That was the key for sure. You never say I don't know. You always say, let me find out for you. Or give me a minute and let's go find out. Or come with me, let's find out together. You don't say I don't know if someone's asking you a question about the park. However, if somebody is asking you to put up the weather dome, you're allowed to say no.
You can say, or I'm sorry, that's not going to happen because you're a moron. No. We can't say that. We couldn't say that.
We could think it.
We would just tell them, no, I'm sorry, have a magical day. That's what we would say as cast members, yeah.
So if you are under the impression that if you make enough noise and you yell loud enough that you're going to get your way, that is not necessarily the case.
Here's another cast member driven one, and that's there's a basketball court in the Matterhorn. Well, cast members know this one from Disneyland. It is very true.
It's false. It's a half court.
It's a half court, but it's still a basketball rim, and it even has a little, very small painting on the ground of where you can shoot it's not even a half court shot, really. It's not even a half court. It's like a tenth of a court. But me personally, I got the opportunity to go in and shoot a basket in the Matterhorn in the break area in the very center. It's not really a break area. It's kind of a dark and dingy area. But right in the middle of the Matterhorn is a basketball hoop with a basketball.
Did you get a hole in one?
Wrong sport. Yeah.
Oh, go
I
sports.
did make a basket. It took me like 3 times, but yeah, I made a basket.
My last one, well, I kind of have 2 more. One of them I had never heard before, and I just want to address at the end. But this next one I'm going to say is that the character costumes are self-cooling.
Yeah, no.
I bet they all wish they were.
Yeah, no.
And
not.
what we mean by this is, let's see.
Built-in fans or built-in water cooling.
Or special material that they're made out of. No, they're just really, really hot in there. And they take extra breaks when it gets to the summer. If Mickey has to suddenly run backstage so he can go feed Pluto, that's because they just need a little break. So give them a second. Mickey will be right back, I promise.
Now the friends, I'm doing bunny ears because it's, near Easter. Friends of characters that are getting very hot sometimes do have an ice pack type of vest that they can wear, but it depends on how much room they have within the costume itself. So some characters do have a little bit more leeway in what they can do to cool down than others, but the characters work small sets or short sets, especially in the summer, so that they don't overheat.
Now, we've been kind of bouncing back and forth, and me doing one and Rod doing one, but I have another one that kind of goes on the tail of this one, because it has to do with our friends of characters again. And the rumor is that there is a hug rule. And if a child hugs a character, the character does not let go until the child does. That's the rumor. And this is true. It is a true story. It makes me a little teary because it's so sweet. But I just love that you don't...
Aww. It is a very sweet-natured rule, but it is more of a guideline than a rule. But
it is.
But yeah, the characters, if they are in a state where they can actually hug the character, some characters can't hug, depending on how much room they have with their arms. Wreck-It Ralph, not a very good huggable character.
All of the princesses.
Yeah, any of the face
great
characters.
Yeah.
But ones like Baymax is
Baymax is a little harder to hug.
Or I remember the old Winnie the Pooh that had the honey pot. Could not move his arms at all. He could move his nose, but he couldn't move his arms. So yeah.
But yeah, the general feeling behind that is that you just don't know what is going on in that kid's life, and you don't know how much they need a hug. So the characters won't let go until the kid does. And P.S., this does not apply to creepy adults, so don't try it.
The last one I have is for Epcot, because we haven't done one for Epcot really today. They were going to build a country and world showcase for Equatorial Africa. Little known fact, this is actually true. If you look at some of the opening materials for Epcot back in the 80s, there were several other countries that they had talked about, and Equatorial Africa was one, but because of the nature of the politics in the country at the time, it was abandoned. But this is why there's an African-inspired architecture area between China and Germany. This is that refreshment outpost that's out there, and a lot of people wonder, why does this look like it's Africa? Well, that area was set aside for a country pavilion at one time.
And we still call it that.
Yeah, we still refer to it as the Africa area. It looks like it's right out of Animal Kingdom now.
Yeah, when you go by and hear the drums, there you are, right over the bridge.
All right, well, I've got one for you, Sue.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to just call this, which one is real and which are April Fools?
Oh, dear. Okay.
All right. There are 3 things. Number 1, Winnie the Pooh is a girl.
Okay.
Number 2, you used to be able to fly directly to Disneyland Park and Walt Disney World Resort. Or number 3, you used to be able to buy lingerie at Disneyland.
Okay, number 3 I know is absolutely true.
That is true.
That was the wonderful Wizard of Braz.
That's exactly right. When Disneyland first opened, Main Street USA housed a shop from Hollywood Maxwell, which featured the wonderful Wizard of Braz, who told you about intimate apparel between the turn of the century, 1900, of course, not 2000, and 1955.
Which I just think is hysterical.
Okay, so that is true. How about Winnie the Pooh as a girl?
We're going to do that one last.
Okay.
Because that's the one that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay. And number 2, you used to be able to fly directly to Disneyland Park and Walt Disney World Resort.
I don't know how that would be feasible, but I'm going to say yes, it is, because that's just bizarre enough to be true.
It is absolutely true. Los Angeles Airways and Golden West Airlines had helicopter service from LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, to the Disneyland Heliport, which was just southeast of Tomorrowland off Harbor Boulevard, until a tragic crash in 1968 ended the practice.
Can only imagine what that would cost.
Oh, yeah. And there is still the remnants of the Lake Buena Vista Airport just south of the Contemporary Resort, where flights from Orlando and Tampa were flown by Shawnee Airlines with ticketing through Eastern. If you remember early Disney, Eastern Airlines was the official airline of Disney World, and a company called Executive Airlines. This was ended in the early 80s due to the monorail extension for Epcot. It was considered an STOL, or a short takeoff and landing airport, so it was only serviced by very small airplanes. But you could actually book a ticket from your hometown to Orlando, and from Orlando to Walt Disney World up
That's
until the
pretty
early
cool.
80s. I think that's amazing.
I would love to see an airplane ticket that said that.
All right, and the last one, Winnie the Pooh is a girl.
Okay, so here's the thing. This was the one I had never heard this before. Winnie the Pooh is voiced by, originally was voiced by Sterling Holloway, who is male. Is now voiced by Jim Cummings, also male.
Who's amazing.
Is amazing.
They both are amazing, really.
Yeah,
They're both
for
Disney
sure.
legends.
Yeah, for sure. However, here's the thing. In the original stories, A.A. Milne, Alan Alexander Milne, who wrote the books, based his characters off of his son, Christopher Robin, real person, off of his toys. So Christopher Robin named Winnie the Pooh after a bear that he used to visit at the zoo. Winnie the bear, the actual bear, was female. However, in the first book, the very first chapter of the very first book, Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne, we have chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie the Pooh and some bees, and the stories begin. And the very first line, here is Edward Bear coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. And skipping ahead, we have, anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh. When I first heard his name, I said, just as you were going to say, but I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't, but you said, he's Winnie their Pooh. Don't you know what their means? Ah, yes, now I do, I said quickly, and I hope you do too, because it's all the explanation you're going to get. Winnie is a boy.
So, that one is maybe true, but we're going to call that one April Fool's, because Winnie is actually a boy in the books, even though the backstory makes you think that maybe Winnie is a girl.
Exactly. And great trivia question, his actual name is Edward Bear.
I love it. I thought it was...
No, he lives under the name of Mr. Sanders, but that's just the name on the sign above his door.
Right. Good. Very good point.
The many names of Winnie the Pooh.
So, folks, that's our April Fool's Day edition with Disney Myths and Legends.
I want to know if there's any in there that you had believed were true that you found out were false, or vice versa. And if we skipped any, there are so, like we said, there's so many out
Of them out there. Yeah.
But did we skip any that are your particular favorites? Let us know in the comments.
Before we go, we'd like to give a big thank you to our social media coordinator, Riley Piper, audio engineers, Joey Humphrey and Paul Trett, logo designer, Evan Piper, and our theme music composer, Jason Patrick Rowan, whose music is licensed through Pond 5. And of course, thank you, Phoenicians.
Thank you, Phoenicians. And don't forget to rate, review, like, and subscribe. It really does help other people find us. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. The Epcotian Adventure is a $1,000 brunch production and a proud gold member of D23.
Thanks for joining us today for episode 57 of the Epcotian Adventure. I'm Rod.
And I'm Sue.
And we'll see you live.
Bye.
The next one I have is that Splash Mountain was not the first log ride at Disneyland. This is a weird one because this is actually something that happened to me personally. I was working Splash when it first opened, was outside doing guest control, and a guest came up to me and asked, "Where is the log ride?" Well, folks, there was not a log ride at Disneyland before Splash Mountain, and she wouldn't believe me, so this one is actually not quite an urban legend, but this is something that happened to me as a cast member that I still to this day find very odd. Turns out she was thinking of the one at Knott's Berry Farm, so a lot of locals that were older may have been under the impression, if they didn't go to parks very often, that Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm were the same thing. Therefore, the log ride at Knott's was at Disneyland. And no, it was not. So Splash was the first log ride. That one's just one that sticks in my craw after all these years.
It was such a good one, too. It's such a good log ride.